The question of whether India could ever have just one common language, and I mean, it seems kind of impossible, right? When you think about it.
It's definitely a question that's been debated for decades, really.
Yeah, and to help us untangle this whole thing, we're going way back
Oh, yeah. How far back are we talking?
to 1948, to be precise.
Okay, so post-independence India. That's fascinating.
We're looking at the work of K. Appadurayar.
Okay, I'm familiar with some of his work. A real deep thinker.
He wrote this whole treatise on the language issue. And
A treatise. Wow, he really went all in on this, huh?
yeah, he dives deep, which is what we like, right?
Absolutely, the deeper the better.
So one thing that really struck me was how he challenges some of the assumptions we might have about which language could even work.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, most people would probably say Hindi, right?
Makes sense, most spoken language, right?
Or Sanskrit, the mother tongue.
Yeah, those seem like the obvious choices, I guess.
But Appadurayar really makes us rethink those ideas. And
Oh, this is getting good already.
I know, right?
I'm hooked. So, okay, to start us off, I mean, the sheer number of languages in India is mind-boggling.
Right. It's crazy.
243 to be exact.
Yeah, 243. Just trying to wrap your head around that is tough.
So, right off the bat, finding one common language seems
Well, daunting, to say the least.
daunting, is putting it mildly. And we have to remember that the idea of a unified Indian nation,
As we know it now.
right, as we know it now, is relatively new.
These were like distinct regions for centuries with their own strong linguistic identities.
Exactly. So it's not just about picking a language, it's about...
Well, it's almost like trying to erase those separate identities, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be seen that way. It's a delicate balance.
Okay, so Hindi and Sanskrit, maybe not so simple, but what about English?
Ah, the English question.
I mean, it's already used in government, education, business.
Yeah, you could argue it's already a common language in a lot of ways.
So problem solved.
Well, not so fast. Appadurayar brings up some really important points about English, too.
He doesn't like it.
It's not that simple. He acknowledges its role, its usefulness, but
But there's a but.
there's a big but. He argues that English dominance is, well, how do I put this?
Tied to colonialism.
Exactly, to British rule and all the baggage that comes with that.
Yeah, so it's like, even if it's useful now, it's hard to separate it from that history.
Precisely. And he makes the point that relying on a language that was kind of imposed from the outside,
It doesn't help build a true national identity.
yeah, it can actually hinder it, he argues.
So English is out. Hindi, we already said, is probably not going to fly.
Too much conflict, too much history there.
Okay, so what about Hindi's close cousin, Urdu?
Urdu is interesting because its history is so intertwined with the creation of Pakistan and that whole... And that division was so deeply tied to language and religion, right?
With Urdu being closely associated with the Muslim community.
Right, so promoting Hindi can be seen by some as trying to erase those identities.
Like saying, your language doesn't matter, only Hindi does.
And that, of course, creates resentment and division, not unity.
Okay, so we've ruled out English, Hindi, Urdu, but what about Sanskrit? It's like the granddaddy of them all, right?
The mother tongue.
The ancient language revered for centuries. Surely everyone can agree on Sanskrit.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But here's where Appadurayar throws a curveball, and it's a big one.
Oh, do tell.
He suggests that Sanskrit might not actually be the mother of all Indian languages.
Wait, what? Really?
And he even proposes that Tamil could be older.
Tamil older than Sanskrit? Whoa, that's blowing my mind a little.
It's a bold claim, for sure. His point is that what we think of as like classic Indianness might be more Dravidian than we realize.
So like Tamil culture is the real foundation.
That's what he's arguing, yeah. And he has some fascinating evidence to back it up. For example, even in Sanskrit itself, many of the words for prayer, like japa, tapas, puja,
I've heard those, yeah.
they're actually borrowed from Dravidian languages.
No way. So it's like the language itself is telling a different story.
It really is. And Appadurayar goes on to critique the whole cultural and social baggage that comes with Sanskrit.
Like, how so?
Well, he points out that this reverence for Sanskrit has often come at the expense of other languages and cultures.
Creating a hierarchy.
Exactly. And that kind of hierarchy, he says, can be a major barrier to true national unity.
Wow. So we've gone from Hindi to English to Sanskrit, and each one has its own set of complexities.
Yeah, it's not a simple question, is it?
Not at all. And it seems like every option leads to a dead end.
Well, Appadurayar doesn't just critique the existing options. He actually offers an alternative, and it might surprise you.
Oh, Lay it on me.
He makes a case for
Tamil. Seriously. Now that is unexpected.
I know, right? But he has some compelling reasons, which we'll dive into next time.
Okay, I am officially intrigued. Can't wait to hear more about this Tamil twist.
Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. All right, so we've seen how English, Hindi, even Sanskrit all have their own baggage.
Yeah, lots of historical, cultural complexities.
It's like every path we've tried hits a wall, you know?
So is there even a way forward? Is there ANMY language that could work?
Well, Appadurai doesn't just shoot down the usual suspects.
He actually offers an alternative.
He does. And it might surprise you.
Oh, come on, don't leave me hanging.
He makes a case for Tamil.
Tamil?
Seriously, I know, right? It's not the first one that comes to mind.
Definitely not. Why Tamil? What's his reasoning?
So Appadurai lays out a bunch of arguments, really makes you see Tamil in a new light.
Okay, color me intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, for starters, he emphasizes just how ancient Tamil is.
We always hear about Sanskrit being the oldest, right?
Right. But Appadurai points out that Tamil predates even the earliest Sanskrit literature.
So like way, way back.
We're talking thousands of years of continuous literary tradition.
Wow, okay, so it's got the historical depth.
Yeah, it's got that for sure. But there's more.
There's always more.
Unlike Sanskrit, which is so closely tied to Hinduism,
Right.
Tamil has this history of being more, accommodating to different religions.
More inclusive.
Exactly. You find Jain, Buddhist, even Muslim and Christian influences in Tamil literature.
So it reflects that diversity of India's population better.
That's one of his points, yeah. He argues that a truly unifying language needs to reflect all those voices.
Makes sense. But I always thought of Tamil literature as being quite...
secular.
Yeah, secular, like focused on nature, ethics, daily life, that kind of thing.
It is, and Appadurai sees that as a strength, actually.
Really? How so?
Well, he says that focus on universal values is, super relevant today.
I guess so. But in a country where religion is so central.
Right, but think about it. He's talking about the things that unite us as humans, regardless of beliefs.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
Like take the Thirukkural, for example.
Never heard of it.
It's often called the World Bible of Tamil literature.
Wow, okay, that's a big title.
It's all these couplets, these teachings about ethics, philosophy.
What kind of stuff?
Honesty, compassion, justice, all these universal values.
So it's less about religious doctrine, more about just being a good person.
Exactly. And Appadurai suggests these values, as they're expressed in Tamil literature,
could be a unifying force.
That's his argument, yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. I have to say, you've made me think about Tamil in a whole new way.
That's what we're here for, right?
Right.
To challenge those preconceived notions.
But let's be real. Even if Tamil has all these great qualities,
yeah.
Is it really feasible? Could it actually become the common language of India?
$1 million question, right? And Appadurai he's realistic about the challenges.
Yeah, doesn't think it'll happen.
He lays out these criteria for what would make a common language successful, and
it's a tall order.
To say the least. I mean, first off, it has to be widely accepted, not imposed.
Right, no one wants another language forced on them.
Especially with all those regional identities and linguistic pride.
Yeah, good luck getting everyone to agree on anything.
Then the language has to be practical, easy to learn, easy to use.
So not just for scholars, but for everyday people.
Right. It has to be accessible. And on top of that,
what else?
It needs to be able to express the full range of human thought.
Like science, art, literature, all that.
The whole shebang. It has to be a language that can grow with India.
Wow, that's a lot to ask.
It is, but Appadurai is looking for something that can bridge the past and the future,
Connect the local and the global.
Exactly, and represent all that complexity of India.
It's like searching for the holy grail of languages.
Ha! That's a good one. But really, his point is to make us think critically.
Not just about which language, but about what language even means.
Exactly. He's giving us a framework for asking the right question.
Which is just as important as finding the right answer.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so we've explored all these different options. Hindi, English, Sanskrit, even Tamil.
And it feels like we've hit a wall with every single one.
It's almost like there's no easy answer.
Well, that's kind of the point Appadurai is making.
He's not trying to give us a solution on a silver platter.
No, he wants us to grapple with these complexities.
To really understand just how tangled this whole language issue is.
And how much deeper it goes than just picking a language.
Yeah, it's about identity, about culture, about history, about power.
About what it even means to be a nation, right?
Exactly. And that brings us to you, the listener.
Why should you care about all this?
It might seem like an academic debate, something for, scholars to argue about.
But language affects everyone, right?
It shapes how we see the world, how we connect with each other.
It's how we communicate, how we share ideas, how we build relationships.
And when language is used to divide or exclude, that has real consequences.
Think about it. Language can be a bridge, but it can also be a weapon.
So understanding India's language debate is about understanding the power of language itself.
And how it can be used for good or for ill, right?
Exactly. And on a personal level, Apaturiar's work makes us think about our own relationship with language.
How does the language we speak shape our worldview?
How can we use language to foster understanding, to break down barriers?
To connect with people who are different from us?
It's such a crucial question in today's world, where language is often used to create these us versus them narratives.
We need to be more conscious of how we use language, how it impacts others.
Apaturiar reminds us that language can be a force for unity, for empathy.
It's not just about words, it's about how we use them to connect with each other.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to one of Apaturiar's most surprising claims.
You mean about Tamil potentially being a unifying language?
Yeah, that one. It was a bold statement.
Definitely. Do you think it's even remotely possible?
I mean, it's hard to say. It's a beautiful idea.
But the reality is there's so much history, so much baggage.
So many deeply held beliefs and identities.
But maybe that's what makes it worth thinking about, right?
What would it take for a language to truly bridge those divides?
Could any language overcome those deep-rooted cultural and political barriers?
Those are the questions Apaturiar leaves us with.
And that's the beauty of a good deep dive, isn't it?
We started with the seemingly simple question.
Could India have one common language?
And ended up exploring the very heart of what it means to be human.
To communicate, to connect, to belong?
It's been a fascinating journey, and we hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those conversations flowing.